All right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the Forge Coffee Break. This is a bi-weekly meeting or coffee break session for us to discuss any Forge topics. This week we are having the Asgard Forge Accelerator, and I have here with me a few of the attendees that are participating this week. And this is also an open space for us to discuss any Forge topics, any questions that you have. The recording will be available right after here. My name is Augusto Gonçalves. I'm part of the Forge Advocates group here at Autodesk. I have here with me a few other members of the Advocates group. Just to name a few, I have Sergio, Peter, Adam. Who else? Oh, I have Jim as well. Hi, Jim.
Morning.
Morning. And so, as I said, open space for questions. If you have anything, any topics that you want to bring up, any new flavors of coffee that you are trying over the last 2 weeks, anything goes.
I'm out of coffee. Can you help me?
You met a coffee? Oh, our coffee. Oh, where are you, by the way? Oh, Jim, where are you? Are you in San Francisco or Napa? I know you.
San Francisco today.
Okay, okay. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
have good options for coffee. You can try any of those.
Yeah, it's Pete's, Starbucks, or kind of the local coffee shop run by a local guy, which tends to be my favorite.
I remember that. Remember that one. It's a good one.
Yes, the roastery.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. So this week we're having the Asgard Accelerator. We are also announcing a few things coming for AU. So AU is very close, in less than 2 months now. And if you haven't registered yet, go for it. It's free. Yay! So you can attend AU. We are going to be hosting a Forge training the the third week of October, October 19th to 23rd, and this is now on our blog announcer there. So I know that the training can be a bit basic for most of you. You are working with Forge for a long time, so you probably already know how to work with the basics. But if you have a colleague or someone that is just starting with the Forge APIs, this is a very great chance for them to get started and be ready for AU. We did this training back in April and was very interesting, a good success. We had 350 unique attendees coming to the training. Was very good. A lot of people joining or learning how to use Forge. And again, this time instead of 4 days, we'll be doing 5 days. So we're including the extensions for the viewer. And we are also doing one more region. We're doing that on APAC as well. So we have 3 options of time zones. If you're based in APAC, Asia Pacific, Europe, or Americas. And it will be exactly the same training, just different time zones. So invite a colleague, invite someone that you want to show what Forge is. That would be a great opportunity for them to get started. Let me go back to you. Questions, topics that you want to bring up.
Yeah, so Augusto, the training, is the expectation somebody's a full stack web developer, or can you be a total newbie?
Yeah, good point, Jim. It can be a very newbie or new to Forge or new to development. The training is actually tool-centric, meaning that we show you on the tool where to click and which code to paste on your application, right? So it's very easy. And you can go as deep as you want because you can just go deep on the code and understand what the code is doing, or just grab the code and place on your application, right? It's scalable. So from the experience we have in the past, it works nicely with very complete newbie to medium experience with web. If someone is really it's really advanced and really good, they will do it really fast. The training is like too basic, but it works really well for everyone that wants to try it out for the first time. And the tutorial is actually the code we use in the tutorial is not something that is just a tutorial, right? We see a lot of people grabbing that code or starting with that code and building applications during the accelerator. So it's something that you can extend after that. So we see that happening a lot. So it goes well for a wide range of expertise level.
Can I register now? You
Yeah,
must
yeah.
have just posted this one. I didn't realize this was up now.
Just click here, register here, and should
Cool.
it's taking you to Eventbrite website. So yeah, just go for it. And I think we posted that Monday afternoon because we have the Forge newsletter coming out this Friday, I think, or early next week. So yeah, it's time.
It's time for me to start tweeting it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to grab more Twitter followers, so it's taking time. Any other questions? How are you guys doing?
Good morning. Yes, I have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Go.
Hi there. So I think Peter answered a Stack Overflow question I posted yesterday. It has to do with selecting and highlighting BIM elements in the viewer, where if a parent is selected, all its leaf or children nodes are highlighted. And the kind of intricacies that come with that, where there's some confusion with some of our clients on a group being selected and its children being highlighted, but not actually in the selection.
Yep. Hey, Cole. So that was you. It's
Hi,
good to
yes. Nice to meet you.
Thanks in the name. Hey, good to meet you. Yeah. So again, I don't think that this has anything to do when you mentioned that specific, like a Revit model where you could have geometry attached to not only to leaves, but also to group nodes. Because again, I was able to reproduce the same behavior with regular models. I remember that I think this was between 7.1 and 7.2. There were some deeper changes done in the selection, in the selection highlighting, and we had discussed that with the Forge Viewer engineering team. It had to do with performance, where basically having the old like see-through highlight, the actual highlight where that can be seen through other geometries that are potentially occluding what you selected, that was causing troubles. And so they changed behavior even deeper, right? So you may have noticed that the selection actually behaves differently when it's a leaf node, or if you select a leaf node, it actually still uses the see-through selection highlighting. But if you select something that's not a leaf, it just gives the objects in the entire subtree a blue color tint, right? So you can't really see that through other occluding geometry. So that was one thing that we had some strong differing opinions on why that is. And again, the team explained that this was for performance reasons. And I believe that this is probably related to that change that they did between version 7.1 and 7.2. So I reported that issue to the engineering team, and I'm waiting for their feedback, basically. Because yeah, I don't think that even if performance is affected, this is a bit confusing. This disconnect between what you select in the browser, in the model browser, and what is selected in the scene. Yeah, so I'll let you know as soon as I hear back from them.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, diving into this code and I dug into a couple of like internal functions that control highlighting, and it's like always go through the children nodes to highlight them. So like the different, once I figured out highlighting and selection are different, then that makes sense. But describing that in non-technical terms is very difficult.
It's not easy, that's true. By the way, Augusto, if you want, I think I posted a link to a GIF animation right under the image, because just the screenshot itself may not give you the exact idea. Here, this is what's going on, right? You can select a couple of objects, let's say, then you select the entire group, but then you can unselect the children, and it's not entirely clear, right? It's a bit disconnected. I already proposed some ideas on how this could change to the engineering team. So I think we could update the behavior so that it works a little bit better, right? So that, for example, if you click on the group, all children get selected, both in the browser as well as in the tree. And then when you, let's say, deselect one of the children, the group itself gets deselected as well. And these special cases.
That sounds like a good idea. We are kind of doing something like that, where so when a selection happens, we take that selection and we assign it to some task or do some coloring with it or whatever we need to do. I wrote some functions to take the selection and run through anything that has geometry. So it would check what has geometry and then basically turn that into the selection.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. So yeah. So I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know as soon as I hear back.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have a question on this. I see 7.2. Is that still the same on 7. What do we are now right now? 7.27.
27. I think we're at
7, yeah.
7.27.
Still the same.
I believe it's the same.
Yes, I tried it in some sandbox environments in the latest version, and the behavior was the same.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for the question code. Yeah, I like that you have your cyborg name. It's
Yeah, I noticed that too. So that's why I didn't really make the association first when I saw your name called. I'm like, oh, okay.
Just different enough.
cool.
Oh, and I see, Augusto, you're getting another 10 plus 10 points. I really need to catch up with you on Stack Overflow.
Have here, yeah.
Almost 8,000. I'm going to have a hard time catching up with that.
It took me some time, yeah. And as I have you here, Peter, I saw that you have a new blog post, this snappy view. It's quite interesting, right? To have a way to snap into elements.
Oh yeah, yeah. So guys, if you don't know, you may have noticed, right, when you use tools like the measure tool, for example, that the tool can snap to different parts of the geometries, both in 3D and 2D, right? It can snap to vertices, it can snap to midpoints in circle centers and stuff like that. And that functionality has actually been encapsulated into a reusable class called Snapper. It's in the Autodesk Viewing extension snapping namespace. So you can actually use this functionality to enable snapping in your own viewer extensions, or where it really makes the most sense, in your custom viewer tools. So we have another blog post that goes into detail on the concept of tools and tool stack in a Forge viewer. So this is, you can think of this as sort of an extension to that blog post, where this gives you some additional details about how you can make your custom tool in Forge viewer even more convenient for your users, so that they don't have to precisely make sure that they place, let's say, corners of their 3D areas in the right place, because you can just enable snapping for them. So with this, and I think, yeah, we include a simple sample code with this blog post as well, leveraging the Snapper class. And what it does, it's like a very simple tool that after you enable it from the toolbar, you can basically start snapping to corners or midpoints of individual primitives in your 3D model. And you can use that. We use that to generate a polyline, and we use the 3-dot extruded mesh geometry to basically generate a 3D area, sort of based on the points that you specify, where the minimum and maximum, the height of the area is defined by the largest distance between the points that you specified. So that's what this code is going to do.
Peter.
Yes, go ahead.
So the snap, is it snapping off the kind of the rendered mesh, or is there underlying topology, BREP?
That's a good question. So it is using the mesh intersection as a starting point, right? So one thing that I think I mentioned that as a disclaimer in this blog post as well, is that for the snapping to actually work, you need to hover somewhere over the geometry. If you just hover in empty space, right, it will not snap to anything. because as a starting point, the snapper logic requires the actual mesh intersection. But then what's happening is that when the code detects that you did intersect a mesh with your mouse cursor, it then starts finding the closest edge or the closest face or the closest edge midpoint or stuff like that. And I believe it's also digging into topology information if that is included with the tessellated triangular mesh. And then it snaps to whatever is closest, right? But the starting point, as you said, is the actual mesh that you're hovering.
Okay. You know what it is? I get people who wonder about, I want to get accurate measurements. And for that, I kind of need the underlying topology.
Yeah.
The mesh itself is not quite accurate enough.
Exactly. If it's about taking measurements, then taking measurements off of the triangle tessellated mesh may not give you precise results, right? And that's why the model derivative service in Forge, where possible, it'll try to basically include the original topology information with the tessellated meshes. Right? So for example, yes?
So Fusion, Inventor, SolidWorks all have real topology under there somewhere.
I'm not sure about SolidWorks. I think that one may be coming with topology as well. I know that, for example, Fusion, as you mentioned, if you bring in a Fusion model into Forge, yes, you'll basically get the tessellated mesh as well as the topology information. So that when you start taking measurements, the measurements are actually taken from the topology. So you actually get the elliptical arcs and circular arcs and curved faces and stuff like that. So the measurements are precise.
And Snappy will kind of work with that depending on what's there.
Yeah, that's the same thing, right? So if topology is available, the snapper will snap to the topology, right? And then if there's no topology, for example, if you're looking at some other file formats, the snapper will fall back to snapping to faces and vertices and edges.
Cool.
Really nice insight inside from the viewer. Thank you, Pedro. And I like the shirt as well, WebGL. Cool.
Hey.
Yeah.
I had this one yesterday.
All right. And what else do we have?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Francesca. You have to speak closer to the microphone. It's a bit hard to hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Well, better.
Perfect. So I've got a general question about the translating of a federated model, because some of our users send us a model about, for example, an architectural model or a structural model, both realized in Revit. So what we do now is not using Naviswork in order to have only one model, but instead we keep to have the two models, and we load them separately in the Forge viewer. So we essentially load two different models, and then we assemble on the viewer. Maybe what I wonder is it better to load only one zip file using the possibility to have to keep the link, the Revit link between the two models, or it's not so good to use a zip file? Is it possible, or is it, for example, something that is available for Inventor and the parts and not for Revit?
And you were talking uploading the files to OSS, not BIM 360.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's about model derivative, right? It's about translation. So if you upload a zip, it means that if let's say you have 5 linked files, right? If you upload a zip, every time one of those 5 linked files change, you have to upload the entire zip again, because we only see one file, one zip, right? And you have to always say, okay, translate that big zip and upload it again. The other approach is to upload the 5 individual files and then tell the system, okay, this is how they relate to each other. and then say translate the parent one, right? The cost is the same because you are always translating one file, but you don't need to upload the entire, all the 5 files again. You just upload that one that have changed, right? But if you're translating them together, if you are aggregating them inside the viewer, meaning that you translate one file at a time and then load all the 5 files together, then you cannot use a zip, right? You have to always upload them separately, then load them individually inside the viewer. So there is nothing like a best approach. It's always it's about the workflow you have. One approach that can help you on performance is to combine them inside Navis and then translate it inside the viewer, because Navis will do some optimization before it's translated on the viewer. So if you can do that, that's the best performance you can get. Combine them into Navis and then translate as a single Navis file. But the other way to upload them separately as a zip or as a zip, it's really about your workflow.
Okay.
Anything, Tim?
Yeah, Gustav, I'm a little confused. So I can upload as a zip. And I basically end up with what's a single model, and I really can't pull it in piece by piece, or I can pull it in kind of piece by piece still.
Upload as a zip, it will be one file.
It is one.
Yes.
And there's another way to, it's a single model, but I upload each file on its own, but still a single model, so I'm only paying once?
Yes, so you can upload 5 individual files, and then before you translate, you tell the system this is how they relate to each other, and then you translate the parent file. You still end up with one URN that will load all 5 linked files, but still one URN, because you are just it's just an optimized way of translating 5 linked files instead of a zip, right? You upload 5 files, establish the connection between them, and then translate the parent.
Okay, so that's attractive when the individual files are changing, so I can just upload just the one that's changed.
Yes.
And I still end up with this model derivative single file kind of representation. Don't I have to pay each time that happens, or no?
Well, if every time that you post a job, right, that's when you pay for a translation. When you say post job, that's when you are paying. So if you upload 5 individual files, translate them all 5 files, and then combine in the viewer, you are posting jobs 5 times. So therefore, you are paying 5 times. So if the cost is something that you have to worry about, you have to think how many times you have to call post job, right? That's something you have to think about.
Perfect. I think that all the consideration made by Jim is what I thought before today. So perfect.
All right. There is one side note about this. It's not actually the same thing, but it's just something that we knew that before, but we didn't realize how that would affect applications. If you have linked files in BIM 360 using design collaboration for Revit, and this is just an interesting note that we realized that this week. If you have linked files in BIM 360 using design collaboration, BIM 360 actually creates a zip with all the linked files. So, but I don't think that's the case for you, Francesca. It's just something that we are describing better. And is Michael here? No, he's not here. So Michael is investigating how we can handle better those files, and he's going to blog about this, hopefully this or next week. He's going to blog on how BIM 360 design collaboration handles linked files as a zip and how you can manage that using the Forge APIs. Could be quite interesting. Stay tuned for that blog post.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's on BIM 360. Yeah, thank you for your question, Francesca. Are you attending the accelerator this week?
No.
Okay, I remember you attended. Which one was it?
I was on the Metropolis, so the first virtual accelerator.
Yeah.
maybe one thing I'd say to everyone, if you're having performance issues, you should really reach out to us and let's have a conversation. Because there's kind of, is it about segmenting the model differently? Is it about Navis? Is it about, well, there's this SVF2 thing that's coming, otherwise known as OTG. So we can really help you kind of sort through your options, because there's strengths and weaknesses to different approaches when you're trying to deal with very large models. And some of it gets to, the users themselves. Are they going to be on a desktop or a tablet or a phone, which is going to affect resource availability? Maybe it's an AR/VR thing where, again, you have resource issues. We have a lot of experience working with a lot of partners on, helping them get the best performance result given the environment, you have to deal with.
Yes, SVF2 is, we discussed that maybe, we are talking about that over the last few coffee breaks. It's a very hot topic, Jim, that's for sure. All right, any other questions? I see Mikal, Neil, Daniel, Money.
So I've got a question for the group. Anybody here needing better rendering where the viewer's not good enough? You need something that's photoreal or maybe just a step better than what the viewer does today. Maybe, your customers or you are using Enscape or something to get better viz, or looking at Unreal or Unity. We're always trying to figure out kind of how far do we go on the rendering side, because there's a lot of rendering technologies out there, and what should we do and what should we kind of leave for other people to do?
Also a good topic.
Yeah, sounds like nobody here is being stressed on the render side.
I think that this kind of theme is big. Personally, what I faced is essentially that I've got, for example, a model mapped with many photographical textures, and I think that it's going well on the first side, but maybe the loading time is something more. It's a bit long, considering the compared to the traditional model. So maybe it's something that we could investigate for that.
Francesca, are these models coming from Revit?
No, they were from FBX made from InfraWorks. So essentially, I mapped the buildings on InfraWorks, and then I translated the model in FBX, and I uploaded the FBX file to Forge. And
you've got terrain photography kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All the textures were translated, so it was a good point. But they take some time to be rendered on the scene.
And is the photo something like it's tiled over a large piece of land?
Yeah, because every building has a particular textures on each side. So I think they are many different textures.
Ooh, so it's almost Street View kind of photos.
Yeah, something like that.
Those very large InfraWorks models.
It's a kind of a laboratory, so it's something that I'm investigating too.
I work on solar projects and making it very large now. So yeah, the lag time between the model loading or you moving around in the model and then you actually seeing results is where most of my customers have an issue. They're happy with how it looks, but it just takes a little while for it to load.
Yeah.
Peter, you're kind of the expert in this area. You got a view?
I mean, for textures, if we're talking specifically about, let's say, textures coming in later when navigating around a model, I think that might be something that we control to some degree, at least by you know, a little bit of JavaScript on the client side. When it comes to the geometry, I think that's where, like, again, if Neil, what you're talking about is like when navigating around the scene, like it takes a while for the geometry to come in. That's where the SVF2 would really, really shine, right? Because one part of the new file format is, well, the geometry deduplication itself, but it's also the new transfer setup, right? Where the viewer, for SVF2, the viewer will basically open a persistent WebSocket connection to one of our servers. And then geometry will be basically flowing to the viewer, not through individual, you know, HTTP requests, but through this permanently open persistent communication channel. So it'll be, you know, transferring the new geometry to you when you need it. It's going to be much more efficient.
That's just adding a bit about how, InfraWorks models. The challenge there is the surface, you know, the terrain. It's not a mesh itself, but a collection of JPEG files, right? And that's what Peter is mentioning. It takes a lot of time to open a new HTTP connection to grab the new file. So one of the improvements we are expecting from SVF2 is to have this channel established. So instead of, you know, having one call for each JPEG, to transfer them together. If you look at the network tab, when you load those models, you see thousands of connections being opened all the time, and it takes, there's a bit of a lag there that, you know, if you reduce that lag 1,000 times, then you get a better performance.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Because in the browser, I'm not sure about the specific number for individual vendors and browsers, but you can, they always limit you in terms of you know, web requests or HTTP requests that can be active at one point in time. I think for like Chrome is, for example, like 6. So your, you know, or Forge viewer is not allowed to make more than 6 HTTP requests going out to, you know, to download different resources at the same time. So that's why, you know, it may add up, and that's where WebSockets would really help, or HTTP2. I think the SVF2 format will use a fallback for HTTP2 as well.
This is Monty speaking. I have a quick question. Sorry, guys, I've joined late. Maybe you guys have already discussed this. Is there a way to separate geometry from metadata when we are passing SVF2 into to the viewer? Now, oftentimes we see a lot of load on the metadata side, and you know, we only want to have them on demand as opposed to, you know, passing them. I know with the SVF, the pockets are actually sending some of that data, and we can't control that.
Well, it's actually, even for the original SVF file format, the metadata is already separated from the geometry. So the SVF format, basically, the file itself is a manifest that then references additional assets, right? The SVF file may be referencing some binary file that contains geometry. It may be referencing another file that contains texture. It may be referencing another binary file that describes the scene hierarchy. And then it references another couple of files that include the metadata. So in that sense, the metadata is already separate from the geometry, even in SVF1. So SVF2 brings improvements on the geometry duplication, but I don't think it changes anything in terms of this metadata geometry separation, because again, that's already done with the first version.
And
So Peter, I mean, when I'm using model derivative, can I say, just give me the geometry? I don't want the metadata right now.
Well, if you wanted to like get the geometry yourself, you could only request the geometry. If we're talking about Forge viewer, right? Forge viewer, you tell the viewer what model you're interested in, and the viewer takes care of everything else, downloading the geometries, the textures, the tree, as well as the metadata. And I'm trying to think, I'm not sure if if it's possible today to configure Forge Viewer to basically ask it not to download.
Because, you know, I'm on a mobile phone and it's a big model and over half the data is metadata, and it just.
Yeah, that's what we've experienced here too. So we've
Yeah,
not been able to pull the geometry.
Yeah, just longer term, Manny, something we are working on is that possibility that you would get no metadata initially. And when you click on something, it'll go get the metadata just for that item you clicked on from a database up on the cloud. So you don't get these big metadata dumps.
Okay. So there is a, thank you, Augusta. Yeah, I thought there was a flag, but I haven't used it myself, to be honest. So yeah, there you go, Manny. Here's a way to basically skip property database entirely.
Skip it and just load the geometry. As Peter was mentioning, the metadata is already separate, but it's one big file, right? It's very optimized, but still one download to get the metadata. What you can is to avoid that and skip that information. You can also load specific elements if you want. And there are a few other things that you can disable extension, etc. So I'll suggest you take a look at this blog post here with some, how you can optimize things depending on your workflow.
Yeah, that's a really good blog post. Thank you, Augusta.
Could you add that to the chat?
Yes, I will do that
right
now.
And to follow up on what Jim mentioned about the new setup that we're moving forward to, where the metadata would remain on the server side and you would really only request it when you need it. We're even considering, well, I would say, yeah, I'll say considering adding basically even more control over querying that data. So it's not going to be just, okay, give me, it's not going to be a request to our server saying, give me the metadata for this one specific object ID, but it's going to be more flexible for you. So you'll actually, and we're talking about maybe potentially making more involved SQL queries where you could say, well, give me certain properties, metadata for some subset of objects that match certain filtering criteria.
And as soon as you say that, something for you to think about, because again, this becomes more important on mobile devices. Packaging it up for disconnected kind of workflows. So you kind of have to think through what data, where should the data be? What are the performance requirements? So kind of as a systems architect, you kind of have to work through it. And depending on the use case, maybe you can assume people are always connected. Maybe they're disconnected doing certain tasks where, you want to package up some of the metadata. There's definitely going to be a lot of possibilities and questions for system architects to kind of work out.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mani. Very interesting topic. Especially when it comes to mobile devices, right? You have to pay special attention to performance and memory consumption.
Yeah, some time ago, we were using BIM server project that I'm thinking maybe some of you guys are familiar with, the open source project that started 7-8 years ago out of Netherlands. So they were actually hosting this information in a server and we can pull the information from the server, but this was only limited to IFC. Long time ago, we decided to change this to model derivative API because customers have a hard time converting. So we don't want to do that either, not to lose the data. So it'd be nice if you can, sort of create that server form architecture so property data can only be pulled on demand per element.
So Manny, we are, have no doubt, we are absolutely working on that. But I want to be careful because it's heavy lifting, for us, because when you get down to working with metadata, it's like who's got privileges to view, who's got privileges to edit, because you get some cool edit kind of workflows that are really hard to do today. And then you got to keep history, and then we're talking about not just Revit data. I mean, it's like civil data, mechanical kind of stuff data. And we want to be able to do that in a very consistent way. So you don't need to worry too much about where the data came from. You know, is it an InfraWorks thing, data, or is it a Revit data? It's like, or is it an IFC file from some other tool that's not Autodesk? You know, we're hoping we'll be able to have that available as you know, proper data. You can do query, filter, you know, view, edit. But it's a big job that we've been slaving away on for about a year now. And we'll probably see the beginning of things you can do at the end of this year.
Wonderful, thanks.
Very hot topic as well, how to have a better access to the data and how to manage that. Yeah.
I'm going to use that to ask you a question. Do you have some kind of private data that, whether you put it in a custom parameter or whether you keep it in your own database on the side, that you would rather kind of sit with the BIM data up on Autodesk servers so you don't need to manage it?
Yes. I think the biggest one for us will be mapping between schedule task items, project schedule, against the model. You know, we have integration with IFC in a way that we can pull that data from IFC. So IFC data accommodates for cost and schedule information. So if that type of data can reside on BIM on your you know, Forge platform, we can pull that data from there. I think right now we've not looked into your cost database, but I assume it's not the same IFC schema that we'll be able to pull. But if it all follows that type of schema, it'll make it much easier for us to jump to that sort of 5D BIM capability in a more consistent way.
Cool. Love it. I'm a little nervous that we'll start to expose some basic capabilities at the end of the year, but I think it's going to take us another year to kind of really fill it out and for it to mature. And we're a little nervous. People need to be a little patient with us because we're trying to solve it in a broad, generic way for lots of different tools and data. Yeah. Maybe another question I'll ask. You know, we're having this back and forth on the best ways to store data: a relational database, a NoSQL database, a graph database. Any opinions?
It's a very difficult question. If you had a resolution on this, I would have told you right now, at least on our side. No, we don't. We keep thinking about this over and over. I mean, the problem is, you know, we always have this memory limit when it comes to browser-based application, right? So the less is more. The way, as much as we can manage, you know, data exchange through a pull and push mechanism, it would be much better as opposed to, you know, pushing and pulling the entire file or chunks of that file. So that idea of, you know, mapping everything to a server, probably SQL-based database, as much as it may be no longer modern, I think it may work.
Or maybe you'd like a SQL-based interface, but maybe the way we actually store the data is a graph database or NoSQL or whatever is appropriate for the data type. Yeah.
It comes down to
metadata. I think the geometry information is very elegant already. The way SVF works for parametric representation, that piece is fine.
Yeah, thank you, Manny. I think I was saying that it comes down to how you want to access the data, and maybe when we say SQL, it's graph, non-SQL, etc. So it's the kind of queries that you are doing with your data, right? Are you trying to, you know, perform complex queries or just, you know, dump the data? How are you trying to get access to that information?
I mean, use cases for us are mostly on quantity takeoff and 4D BIM side. So obviously we want to see if we can extract all that metadata, right, for the elements that the user has selected. And we already have all kinds of challenges because there are all kinds of files, right? And we always have to figure out what is the common denominator when it comes to these units. Can we pull that data in a way that they can immediately create that sort of connection between their, work packages and elements, whether that's a schedule data and element. And doing that on the fly through the web would require really efficient pull and push, right? That's where, our system sometimes may get challenged when, user selects, I don't know, a few thousand elements and want to tie all of them into one task, right? So we have to do all that search after downloading the data on the client side.
Okay, so a search before actually download the data, or filtering before actually download, so that will be faster for you, right? Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, sorry we are running a bit over on our time. It's only 30 minutes, but we always go like.
You can blame it on me, Augusto.
No, but yeah, thank you, Jim. That's I like the topics. That's why we keep going over time. But the topics are so good that we can't stop it, right? So it's all good. With that, let me bring back something else here. That our next section will be in 2 weeks from now. Oops, come back here, slide. In 2 weeks from now, October 7th, the next coffee break. And as always, I'll be posting the recording on YouTube. You can get the link for the recording, and I see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining today. It was amazing questions, amazing discussion, and hope we can see you soon. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gustav.